Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 296 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels, coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio. I'm thrilled that you're checking out the episode. In just a moment, I'm going to be sitting down with Peter Haywood, who was my guest back on episode 213 in one of my earliest, most memorable game episodes from last November. And he's a mad Tiger supporter, and we are going to be doing the third installment of episodes looking back at clubs who did not play finals this year and find out what went wrong, where there's hope, and where there may be despair. I don't know if despair is the right word or not, but the Tigers certainly are in a very interesting position with all of the change that's taking place with that club. Now, folks, before we jump into my discussion with Peter, I do want to just make mention to all of you that if you're interested in getting your hand on one of these right there, all you got to do is drop me a great 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts or over on my website at ayankonthefooty.com, and then drop me a note via email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com and let me know about it with your address so I can get one of those stickers out in the post to you. I've got, I think, 8 or 10 of them that are just lying around, burning a hole in my pocket that I'd want to get on people's computers, on their cars. I don't know if you got a bald head like me, you can slap it right back there on the back if you want to. Again, hope if you're enjoying the episode and you're enjoying the podcast, you'll go ahead and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on the podcast, hope you subscribe. If you're on YouTube, I do hope you'll hit that subscribe button and that share button and tell your friends about this. Really love bringing this material to you, and I thank you for sharing your wonderful game with me. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into my chat with Peter Haywood. I think you're going to like this. Peter's, like I said, a mad, passionate Tiger supporter. And cheers. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to be joined by my guest for this look back at 2023 with the Richmond Tigers. He was a guest back in episode 213, and I think he was actually my first guest on the most memorable game episodes. And the fact that he can remember his most memorable game is a good thing, because it was a rather interesting situation. If you haven't listened to this one, you're going to want to go back and hear his story. Peter Haywood, thanks for joining us, sir. And I apologize for all of the technical glitches, what turned out to be on my end.
Oh, well, we fixed it now. That's all that counts.
Yes, we did. We did. Yes. So it was a bit of a headache, as I was saying there. And for those of you who are checking continuity, I've already recorded the opening and the closing to this episode. So if you notice I have a different shirt on, it's because I recorded the opening and closing a couple of days ago. And we just got back around to actually sitting down to record this tonight. This is Monday night, the 23rd, I believe, of October, that we're recording this here, early Tuesday afternoon in Melbourne. We actually got down to freezing overnight last night. So we were down to 0 when I got up this morning. So winter is coming, and so excited about that. Not really, but I'll say that for the audio here. So, Peter, neither one of us, I think, were terribly happy with the way our seasons went for our respective clubs, but I'd have to think that maybe we were not all that surprised by how things were going to end up going with everything that went on with our club. So were you disappointed with the Richmond season, or were you somewhat satisfied realizing what was happening?
No, it was another wasted season. That's 3 in a row now. Our great premiership era seems to be receding further into history, and
well, as long as it doesn't end up like as long as it doesn't end up being like Melbourne's drought, you won't be too upset about it, though, right? Because that was what
or our last one.
Which
or
was
our last one, that was 37
years. Yeah, 37 years. Melbourne's was a little longer than that, but yeah, well, hopefully it won't be the 37 years either, because theirs was 64. So that was what, 36, 57 years.
64 to 2021. So
yeah, 57 years. Yeah. So that wasn't very long at all, just most of my lifetime at that point in time. But I I've joked, that I'm a fan of the Cleveland Browns, and they won the championship in 1964 here in the NFL when I was a year old. And I said, well, yeah, they won the championship when I was in diapers. I hope I'm not back in diapers before they win another one. So, hope I don't get so old that I had to have, that sort of
But we
thing
say
comes around.
nappies in Australia.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. I hope that is true. That is true. Yes. So, before we get into talking about the season, I did not know this gentleman, but I've looked online, and I've noticed that tribute is being paid today to a gentleman by the name of Bill Meeklem, who had worked as a volunteer with the club for close to a half century.
Oh,
Um, can you tell us
yeah.
a little bit
I don't
about
know that
him?
much about him myself, actually. I know that he was a club
He was a
he
club
was a club
historian,
historian at
right?
Richmond. We
Yeah.
we um we had a museum literally at Punt Road on the
Hmm.
premises, and they had a lot of all the Premiership Cups, old photos going right back to, I guess, when the club was founded in 1885.
Hmm.
Um, when the uh, club was refurbished, or soon after it was refurbished, because they did a lot of the facilities used to be very, very run down and almost amateurish. And then, oh God, I can't put a year to it, but they rebuilt Punt Road, redesigned it, and just brought it right up to scratch. They've got state of the art gym facilities,
Hmm.
swimming pool. Um, I think the next thing they're going to be working on is the grandstand, the old Jack Dyer grandstand, which is full of possum poo and all of
Okay, well, okay, that's
all of the seats are kind of. So that'll be the next stage. So somewhere in all the kind of reorganization, the museum has been kind of mothballed for the time being.
okay.
So I can't say that I'm super knowledgeable about Bill Meekham, but I know that he had a lot to do with the museum and the historical side of it, the
Yeah,
chronicling of the club.
yeah. It looked like.
Another person who's
Go ahead.
kind of doing that a lot now is a guy called Brett Bartlett, who is the son of Kevin Bartlett, the great Richmond player.
Okay, okay,
And yeah, he might have kind of taken over Bill's role to some degree.
okay. So, you know, moving back into the season itself,
Mm.
what were the things that went right and what went wrong for Richmond this year? What were the positives and negatives, if you will, for the club?
Well, I think we knew right from the pre-season that it was going to be a struggle.
Hmm.
We had two pre-season games, and the first was North Melbourne, who we struggled to beat. We beat them, but not very convincingly, and it kind of burst my balloon a bit because you wait all summer and you think, oh, we're going to have a great year, and this we'll bounce back. And
Right, right.
then in the second pre-season game, we got absolutely stitched up by Melbourne out at Casey Fields.
Hmm.
I can't remember the exact margin, but it was pretty bad. And so there's a little group of us Richmond supporters that I kind of hang out with, go to games with. And one guy there said on the strength of those two performances, he looked at our first 5 games and he just said, I'm going to make a bet with you guys that we won't win one of our 5 opening games, and I'll buy you all a meal. I'll take you out for a meal, and if I'm right, you pay me, and if I'm wrong, I'll buy all of you guys a meal.
Well, yeah, and I'm looking at the record. You know, you drew even with the Blues to start the season, and you got that first win in round 2.
I didn't want to take
Crows.
the bet. You see,
yeah.
I didn't want to take the bet. I'm not really a gambler. I never bet on anything. I don't even buy a touch lotto ticket. That's how little of a gambler I am. I didn't want to do it, but he kind of. So when we drew with Carlton, I said, "Oh well, no, that's right." He said, "We're going to lose our first 5 games." That was the bet. And so when we drew the opening round, I said, "Well, technically we haven't lost that game, so let's just call the bet off." And he went, "No. We said that we won't win one of our games, opening 5 games." So the next round we very luckily won, and he lost the bet. But he was almost there because we lost the next 3. We lost to Collingwood, Bulldogs, and Sydney.
Well, you actually lost 5 in a row because you lost to the D's and the Suns after that. Then yeah, it was
Yep.
You know, and I don't remember what round it was where Dimma stepped away from the club. I don't remember when he stepped away, but it was a little bit later in the season. Okay, but you know, it's you know, they rattled off a couple wins in a row. They beat the Eagles and the Cats, lost a couple in a row, won 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Lost 1, won 3 in a row, and then they dropped 4 out of the last 5.
Yeah. Well, the Eagles game, it wasn't very convincing. We won 104 to 58. I think sides at that stage were beating the Eagles by 100 points and more.
Yes.
Even that wasn't a very convincing win. I think probably, and I hate to say this to you, I think probably our most convincing win of the year was against Geelong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely was.
I mean, we beat the reigning premiers, so that was a feather in our cap, I suppose. And we hadn't beaten them since our premiership year, so it was starting to get on a bit of a roll again.
Yeah. So I mean, that was a huge win. It started to level the ship a little bit, right the ship a little bit, if you will. But you know, you lost,
and then the very next week.
Go ahead. Yeah, you dropped that close one to the Bombers.
The next week was the big atomic bomb. The 1-point loss.
Yep.
Something recently came up in the papers about that. I don't know if you saw that in America, but Trent Cotchin has put out an autobiography, and he revealed that Damien Hardwick kind of took that loss very, very badly. Because you remember how when he quit in the wake of that, it was almost like a party line. It was all, we're all really grateful for what Dimma's done, and he's brought us these 3 premierships, and we all leave on good terms, and there's no animosity or bad blood. And we were all sort of encouraged to swallow that party line. But it turned out that when the loss actually came, he in the rooms afterwards, there was an expletive written rant from Damien Hardwick to the players.
Yeah.
And he pointed at the whiteboard with the Essendon team on it, and he said, "Those guys are a bunch of effing spuds, but you guys are worse."
Wow.
So,
so do you think that
I think that loss kind of blew Damien Hardwick's brain?
Yeah. Do you think he was just burned out? I mean, because he seemed to have recovered rather quickly. And I have, I don't know if you've listened to like the preview episodes that I did during the course of the year where I had Mick Aussie on with me, but Mick was convinced, he's a bit of a conspiracy theorist as far as this goes, but he was convinced that the AFL was chirping in Dimma's ear and telling him, step away, take some time off, come take the job at Gold Coast. We're going to get you paid a boatload of money up there. Let's get a return on our investment in this club. And he's convinced that the AFL was whispering in his ear and telling him it's time to move on from Richmond and get yourself up to the Gold Coast and get this club resurrected or get it. I guess it would be surrected because it can't. It hasn't been surrected once to be resurrected. So is surrected a word? Because I'm going to coin it right now since Gold Coast had not played finals yet.
You've invented a word. So.
Yeah. So he came to the state. He came to the States here, spent some time. I know he was in Colorado for a while during the what our summer months, in summer months leading into the season. And I think he went to Europe, if I'm not mistaken, as well. If I'm not mistaken, Gold Coast actually recruited him from visits in
Italy, I think.
Europe. Yeah, they went to Italy and talked to him and got him to sign on the dotted line. But yeah, I had heard about the stuff from Koch, and I know that there was an article or two that showed up on Code Sports about that, and I was actually looking for those articles. But yes, I had seen those.
This conspiracy theory that Mick Aussie has floated isn't as wild as you might think, because one of the Tiger forums that I online forums that I read, there was a guy who said pretty much as soon as it happened, as soon as Dimmer left, there was a guy who came on and said, I happen to be very good friends with an architect who's designed a house for Damien up on the Gold Coast.
Wow.
So I think it's been in the pipeline a long time, and I think the AFL kind of helped push it along. You see, they're very desperate to get these kind of non-football markets, Queensland and Sydney,
right,
up and running and successful. And GWS, I think ultimately they'd love GWS to win a flag, but at least they're happy that they've come close. They've gotten into a couple of preliminary finals, but the Gold Coast, they haven't even played a final series yet, and I think it's probably embarrassing them.
Yeah, because they've invested a boatload of money in that club to get it and make it viable.
Yeah,
and it's
well, originally they tried to. I don't know if you know this, but originally they tried to talk North Melbourne into relocating to the Gold Coast, and it was almost going to go ahead, but North were dug their feet in and said, no, we're not going to do that. So they kind of created this. Did you know about that? Or
I did not. I did not know that I didn't know that they were looking at doing that. I know that you had the club
they would have been like the third struggling club after South Melbourne and Fitzroy to kind of relocate to non-football territory.
Yeah. So, I think one of the big things that the club had to deal with this year was the fact that you were without Tom Lynch for most of the year. I mean, that put a lot of, I think that put a lot of pressure on Jack Rewalt, in what I think he probably knew going into it, this was going to be his last year. I would have to.
Jack was playing a kind of a role where he wasn't really the go-to man. He was almost like a foil.
Yeah. A decoy.
So he could draw fire away. Decoy. He could draw fire away. But suddenly when he's the main go-to man, especially as he's aging, you could see he was really struggling this year. He would have games where he'd kick a goal if he was lucky. he'd seem to have 2 or 3 opponents hanging off him a lot of the time.
Yeah, it is.
But the other,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, the other. See, it wasn't. Lynch was a big one, but I think in many ways we lost our bookends because we lost Gibcus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people kind of go on about, Richmond traded away a lot of really good draft picks to get Hopper and Taranto.
Mm-hmm.
But what they don't say is that we had 5 the year before. We had 5 picks in the top 30, and we got some really good talent to the club. And probably the best of the lot was Gibcus, who it was generally acknowledged was the best young key defender in that draft. And he played 18 games, I think, in his debut season. Kind of tired a bit towards the end, as they do.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine that. Yeah,
but he did a really serious hamstring injury in the preseason and didn't end up playing a single game. And he's since gone off to, I think it's India somewhere, to have some kind of radical surgery done.
huh?
And fingers crossed that he'll be ready for round 1.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, because you don't want to see any club struggling because of injuries. You know, if you're going to defeat a club, if you're going to play a club and you're going to defeat them, you want it to happen with your best going up against their best. If and winning it that way, rather than, okay, we beat you because you had more players hurt than we did. And that's and a lot of people, when the deal was made for Hopper and for Toronto last year, the question was, a lot of people speculated, they were retooling to make one more run to the finals last year, which I think in a way that's probably accurate, but I think also that there was an eye towards 2024, 2025, 2026 with that deal for those 2 young men to come in and kind of become the new foundational members of the club,
because we still have a
go ahead.
Sorry, we still have a core group from our premiership years that are still in their prime. There's 2 or 3 more that are kind of getting towards the end of their careers as well, but there's still a core that's in their prime, like Baker, Short, Daniel Rioli,
Jay Bolton,
to name a few. They're not all spring to mind at them. Oh, Shea Bolton, of course. Yeah.
I mean, right now, you're the oldest players that you have on your list are, Dusty Martin, who's going to be 33, right? Or he'll be 33 in the middle of the season next year, and Dylan Grimes will be 33 a couple of weeks after him.
He might have 2 years left. Who was the other one, sir?
Dylan Grimes being the other one. Then you got, Prestia is going to be 32 next year. Marlon Pickett will be 32 in January. Tom Lynch will be 31 on Halloween, so he's almost, or 32 on 31 on Halloween. But so he's definitely on the. And I just feel weird calling people who are 31 old. Okay, that part that boggles my mind to even being to consider saying that sort of thing because of being the age that I am. But you've got,
well, we're double their age, aren't we?
Yeah, you've got what is looking at it, a club that is maybe younger than a lot of people speculate. When you look at the list that you have right now, that there are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 players on your list are right now under the age of 24. So roughly half your list is under the age of 24 right now, which, and you have only, at this point, you have 6 players who are 30 years or older right now. So people, I think, kind of go look at Richmond, and yes, you're taking Trent Cotchin out of the equation. You're taking, Jack Rewald out of the equation because they've retired. But I think that people have thought for the last few years that Richmond is an older club, but they've gotten younger. I mean, they've shipped out some players who have helped to skew the club younger. Robbie Tarrant retired. Ivan Solo has gone to Port Adelaide, and Port Adelaide's gonna be interesting next year. I mean, they've brought in a lot of pieces themselves to try to turn that club around, but what this was a difficult season, and that they finished 10-12-1 just like the Cats did. Cats had a slightly better percentage, but it's like being like the first loser. They didn't play finals either, so there's no bragging rights for the Cats to say, oh yeah, we were better than you. No, you both had 10-12, and you defeated the Cats this year. But what were some of the signs of progress that you saw this year that have you excited going forward? What are the things that you're going, okay, even though things were scuffling, this is a good thing that I'm seeing here?
A lot of it's going to be dependent, I guess, once again on injuries, because generally, if you have one, the way it's just, if you have one bad year with injuries,
Mm-hmm.
the football clubs in the past tend to move on to another club the following year. But we had two bad years of injury coming into this one, and I was thinking, oh well, we must be due for a change of luck this year, and maybe a case could be argued that maybe we need to make a change with our strength and conditioning staff. But let's just say it's luck. So
Okay.
I am, if we can get Gibcus back up and running, and some of the kids, Sonsi and Coltard, who had a fantastic debut, Judson Clark, these kind of guys.
Mm-hmm.
We brought in Kazitsky from Hawthorn.
He'll be very handy for you.
Yeah,
and he's from Albury. I've actually had somebody from the Albury Tigers on my podcast before. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I had somebody on from the Albury Tigers. So it's I saw a first of all, I guess we have to look at the the obvious questions here. How do you replace a Trent Cotchin? How do you replace a Jack Rewald? I mean, these are two legends of this club that are that are going to be thought about highly for the next couple of generations. I mean, it's gonna you may find a section of something at Punt Road named after one of these guys in the not too distant future because of their contributions to this club. How do you replace a couple of great talents? And Jack Rewald, I think was I loved watching him on AFL 360. I think he's going to have a great career in the media if he decides to do that, or if he decides to go work with the new Tasmanian club, which could very well be the case as well. Yeah. How do you replace? And I know a lot of people were not necessarily if they were a non-Richmond supporter, they weren't necessarily a big fan of Trent Cotchin because I heard the term grub get tossed around a little bit, referring to him and that type of thing. I don't necessarily feel that way because he's a hard-nosed guy, but those are two big holes you've got to fill.
Yeah, you just have to hope that some of the new players will just come through, and they might not be the next Trent Cotchin, but maybe they'll just be the first whatever substitute name here.
Okay, that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, and I know that you're a little short-handed when it comes to draft capital this year. You've got, I think it's right now picks 29 and 40, 29 and 41 are your first two picks because
29,
you're
41, 65,
65.
68, 86.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm wiping off my glasses right now. So my screen is just a little out of focus. If I back up, I can make out the 29, the 41, the 65, but I think 68 you said was the fourth one there. So, you may find a serviceable piece or two, with those picks that are back in the 60s, but hopefully you find somebody that can contribute at 29 and at 41 as well. But because your first rounder is with GWS, and let's be honest, the way GWS came on last year, it's not, talk about a club that in the great grand scheme of things probably doesn't need another first round pick, or the league doesn't think they need him, because that's a club that got pretty talented pretty darn quickly. And I look at them and I think they sure look like they could be a top four side next year. I mean, they
I
look
think
like that.
they were very unlucky in that preliminary final.
Yeah.
I think if the umpires had just paid a couple of blatant round the necks to Toby Green in the context of a 1 point loss, anything could have happened, and we could have been looking at a different premier altogether.
Right.
But then
Yeah.
again,
Because
say that as somebody who hates Collingwood.
right. Well, we kind of joked that to have a grand final where both clubs were non-Victorian clubs, and Mick and I were joking that we might be able to find cheap tickets and fly over for the grand final, because nobody in Victoria is going to want to go watch Brisbane and GWS play in the grand final.
This is the thing, though. The followers of Collingwood or Carlton certainly wouldn't, but I think you don't, maybe being so far away, don't factor in the dislike. There's a lot of Victorian supporters, myself included, whose teams didn't make the finals, who would have been happy for an all interstate grand final, just so we wouldn't have to put up with the bragging of one of the locals. Oh, God, you wouldn't believe. Richmond is so geographically close to Collingwood, and the wake of that, I saw people coming into the shopping centre when I'm doing my weekly shopping in their Collingwood jumpers, and there was this car driving up and down the street with Collingwood flags, and I was just, oh God, why couldn't I have been spared that nightmare?
But we have to readily admit that winning 3 premierships in 4 years, nobody from Richmond did that sort of thing. Although I guess we do have to factor in that COVID was going on, so they didn't have a lot of options to do those kinds of things, because the lockdowns were so darn severe in Victoria that you didn't get many opportunities to actually go out and celebrate.
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned this in the last one. So I went to the 17 grand final, did all of the crazy stuff post-game, watching Jack sing with the Killers, going down to Swan Street and joining that throng of thousands of supporters just going berserk, fronting up to the club the next day, thousands of people there, the players all there up on the balcony with their cup. So it was almost like little incremental stages. So I went from that to 19. I couldn't get a ticket to the grand final. So I went to Punt Road, and a lot of us, a few thousand people there, sat on the grass a couple of 100 yards away, and watched it all on the big screen. So there was sort of communal feel, but it wasn't quite as exciting as 17. And then 2020, you weren't even allowed to have a single friend over to your house to watch the game, and I sat there and watched it on TV by myself. And it was a very odd.
So yes, you won 3 out of 4, but you didn't get to enjoy. Well, you only got to really enjoy 2 of them. You got to celebrate the third one, but there was still not the the outpouring of being excited that you were going to get in the other two because you didn't have the option to do that sort of thing. So, it's it is it's so I guess I can see why you might be a little frustrated with the Magpie supporters, but it's yeah, you kind of have to tip your cap to them because in fact I did not even tip them to play finals this year. I had them, I think, finishing like 10th or 11th this year on the ladder because I just thought with all the close games they won last year, they were not going to have a repeat performance of that. They were going to lose those close games. And it turns out I was completely wrong about that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, any team, whoever they are, they're going to celebrate. Their fans are going to celebrate. It wasn't that so much. It's just that Richmond and Collingwood are traditional enemies.
Yeah.
And so are Collingwood and Carlton, and so are Richmond and Carlton. It's just one of the dynamics.
I get it.
You've got your own local sort of, Ohio hates Cincinnati or whatever.
Yeah, well, it's for me, for a lot of Cleveland Browns fans, for example, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now,
Right.
I don't like the Steelers. I respect the Steelers, but I respect the way the organization is run because they do things the right way. But,
Yeah.
and I've said this on plenty of other episodes, I absolutely I despise the Baltimore Ravens because because they used to be the Cleveland Browns because the owner of the Browns, the owner moved the team from Cleveland to Baltimore in 1995. So we lost our team. We got to keep we sued the league. We got to keep the name, the Browns, get to keep all the team records, that sort of thing. So the Ravens started from scratch in terms of all of like their history. So all the Browns history stayed in Cleveland, and our team came back in 1999. But like I have joked and I've said that if my first wife owned an NFL team and they were playing the Baltimore Ravens, I would go sit in the owner's box, the team owner's box, with my ex-wife to cheer against the Ravens. That's how much I hate them. I hate the Ravens. I wish they would lose every game every single year. I absolutely despise them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what it's like if you're not a Collingwood supporter here.
Yeah.
Their fans are just so insufferable.
Well, and they may have said that same thing about Richmond supporters, or they may have said it about Cat supporters. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you have so many clubs all in the same city, because it is such a kind of a it's a regional thing in terms of being in the city, so I completely get it. And I think that's unlike just about any other sport in any other league on the planet where you have so much of the league concentrated in one area.
Yeah.
It's that's why, you mentioned the North Melbourne thing to going to Gold Coast before, and people have talked about, well, maybe North Melbourne should make the move to to Tasmania and keep the league at 18 clubs, but Tasmania wants their own individual team, and I understand that too, but it almost compels the league to go then to find a 20th location for a 20th team once they bring in the 19th team, because I think you have to have a 20th team unless you're just going to have bye weeks every single week. You're going to have the you're going to bring in the Tasmanian club, and then you're going to have the gather round, and then you're going to bring that team that's on the bye week and say, hey, come gather here, but you don't get to play. Go gather somewhere else, but you're not playing in this round. So I did see where Josh Jenkins, who played for the Crows for a number of years, played for the Cats for a little while, kind of a ruck forward, is doing some stuff in the media now. He said a couple of weeks ago that he sees Richmond as a bottom 4 side next year. I'm thinking you probably do not agree with that.
I think that there's some bitterness in that thing, because wasn't he involved with Adelaide in 2017?
I believe he was, yes.
They were the red hot favourites
I
going into
believe
that.
he absolutely was. Yes. So, um, so,
Another example is like Kane Corns. He hates Richmond, but
uh-huh.
he's and
Well, I think King Corns hates pretty much everybody. And I think unless it's Port Adelaide, I think. But he's critical of Port Adelaide too. I just don't think he hates them necessarily. But he is definitely one of those talking heads, and in the media that I think does a great job of pushing people's buttons to get reactions from them. I think he's really good at that.
well, I'm optimistic because I still, like I said, I think we have still a number of our core Premiership stars in their prime still.
Yeah.
I think Grimes and Prestia will be struggling. They could have, in my opinion, they could have almost given it away this year, but they feel that they're playing on okay.
Okay.
Then on top of that, I think we've got a good bunch of kids coming through, mostly from those 5 players that we picked up in that 21 draft: Gibcurst, Sam Banks, Tom Brown, Sonzi, Judson Clark. I thought we discovered a couple of really good kids that played in that last game against Port Adelaide. There was James Trezise, who could be a good key defender. Another good young key defender we've picked up this year, who really impressed me, was Tyler Young.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that with Adam Muse as the new coach, it's just some fresh thinking and some new input. We brought in Chris Newman as an assistant coach who used to play for the Tigers and did a lot of coaching at Hawthorn. And we also brought in just recently, the guy that retired from North Melbourne. I can't think of his name. Jack Zeeble.
Okay.
So I think there's some good assistant coach and senior coach knowledge there.
Okay. So before we wrap up here, I wanted to ask you also, who do you see making the jump into the 8 this year that wasn't there? And maybe it's Richmond. And who do you see possibly dropping out of the 8 that was there this year?
I think Sydney were very lucky to make the 8 this year. But once again, I don't really know who they've picked up or what their draft picks are, because I do tend to focus completely on Richmond. Who could come in? I think possibly the Bulldogs or maybe even Geelong might return. Do you feel confident about Geelong, or are they still kind of?
I don't. The midfield scares the heck out of me right now. I don't, I think they'll still kick plenty of goals. I just maybe they could, but they've got to have some of these young midfielders step up, because it was, Cam Guthrie came out of there last year, and it was like the entire midfield, you took Joel Selwood out. It's like taking Kachin out. I think there's going to be a huge gap that they're going to have to fill with him not being there.
Lost to Radical.
Yeah, Radically is gone. Which he'd been relegated a couple of times back to the VFL this year. So, and I see nothing wrong with them holding out to pick up a couple late picks for him. They got 25, and then I think they got like 60 like 60 something for him, and then like another late pick in like the 80s or 90s or something like that. But this is a club that is going to be losing probably a half dozen players at least over the next 2 seasons due to retirement, if not more. They're going to need some young blood to try to develop, even if it's somebody that's coming in at like pick 65 or pick 90 or whatever the case it may be, hoping that person pans out. But they've got they had that youngster Jai Clark, who they took at number 7 last year, played one game before he dinged up his ankle. Is he going to be as talented as they're hoping he's going to be? I sure hope so. But I'm not. I guess I'm cautiously optimistic, but I will not at all be surprised if they don't play finals this year, because I think they're gonna need to develop. If the youngsters come along, then they'll be all right, I think. But I think they could finish anywhere between like 7 to 11 or 7 to 12, somewhere in there. I don't think they're a top 4 side at all. I don't think that right now that they are.
Maybe you chose them the wrong year to come to Melbourne and watch it. I'm watching.
Yeah, I picked the wrong year to do that. That's true. But I'll still enjoy the heck out of it. I mean, I said, once the fixture comes out and I can actually start looking at who's playing where when, and how can I get the most bang for my buck in terms of coming there and seeing as many games as I can, because there's a possibility of being able to go see a Thursday night game and a Friday night game and then a Saturday daytime game. Maybe go watch a local club in the daytime on Saturday, then go see a Saturday night game at Marvel or the MCG, and then go see this the Sunday afternoon game. See 4 or 5 games in a weekend, and just
You like the trek down to Cardinia Park?
I'm hoping to do that, and I'm still I've started to just kind of poke around with the idea. I had thought about making the drive from like Geelong or Melbourne over to Adelaide, but that to go see a game at the Adelaide Oval. But then I'm also thinking about the possibility of maybe just hopping on the ferry and taking the ferry to Tasmania and going to visit Tasmania and seeing a game, maybe at Blundstone, down there, and just because from everything that I've read and some of the images that I've seen, Tasmania is like the and again, there won't be a lot of flowers and such out because it's gonna be wintertime, but the animals and such that you see there are unlike anything that you see in other parts of Australia. So I kind of, I just think it would kind of be interesting to go see Tasmania for that purpose as well.
What you do is you go down
Yeah.
to Port Melbourne and you hop on this boat called the Spirit of Tasmania.
Yeah.
It docks there, and just hire a car. And we did this two summers in a row.
Mm-hmm.
One year we went up the west coast, and then the next year we went down the east coast. And it's a great state. Yeah, there's so many beautiful things to see there.
Because I've had so many people who have said over the years that when you come to Australia, we'll get you to a game. Or I've had other folks that have said, well, yeah, you'd have a place to stay and that sort of thing. And I'm thinking, well, you know what? In the very near future, I may be looking to take you up on that. Whoever mentioned that to me in the past. So so I've kind of joked around with that sort of thing, but it may come to fruition here pretty soon. But I'm really excited about it. I've kind of been poking around at looking at flights and airline tickets, and I know I have the flight paid for, and I've got a decent chunk of money set aside beyond that as well. So we'll just see how we'll see what transpires, and once I get dates in terms of when I'm gonna definitely be there, then I'll probably I'll hopefully be able to make some connections with some folks. I'm thinking I'm going to have to get, along with my international membership with the Cats, and I'm going to have to get a different membership to ensure that I can at least get a ticket or two for Cardinia Park, so I can actually get to games there. I'm hoping, but
buy a
yeah,
ticket at the window.
Yeah, I'm hoping also then that, once I figure out when I'm going to be there, that I can do enough stuff in advance, that being a podcaster who, is closing in on having done 350 episodes about this sport, that maybe I can even get some like press access and that type of thing. And maybe, get to go down to the changing rooms or something like that, or maybe do an
Oh,
interview and
yeah.
that type of thing, and just, try to
For
do
the movie
something
stars.
along those lines. And as I've told my wife, I said, I'm just going to let you know right now, I will probably be emptying out the cat's team shop when I'm there. I'm probably going to, I'm going to come home with so much cat stuff that, I'm going to need just an entire suitcase for nothing but new cat stuff that I'm going to buy on the way, to bring home with me. So, it's, I'm pretty stoked about that. But, um, you had mentioned, and I'm trying to remember what else it was. You'd mentioned one other thing that you'd wanted to talk about in the email that you sent me a little bit ago, and I cannot remember
Oh,
what the heck it was off the top of my head.
well, a little bit about the evolution of the game, if we have time.
Yeah, we got a few minutes. Yeah, I mean it's about 10:30 here right now. So yeah, if we don't, if
When I first started following the game, everybody pretty much played their position. So it was just man on man, centre half
Mhm.
forward with the centre half back, full
Uh-huh.
forward with, and it led to high scores. Uh, Prime example, the 1972 grand final. Richmond kicked 150 and lost the game by 27 points.
Holy cow! Wow.
Yeah, hard to believe, isn't it? And then some coaches started coming up with all these, looking at other sports and coming up with all these defensive things, what they call flooding.
Hmm.
And I'd made some notes here, like Rodney Eade. Rodney Eade's Swans in 1996, he took them to the grand final by playing 9 defenders, 6 midfielders, and 3 forwards to create space for Tony Lockett. Do you know about Tony Lockett?
I do know about Plugger Lockett. Yes.
Plugger, yep. He was just an awesome forward, and so they that was um, what they did, and also the dimensions of the SCG helped that. And then his successor, Rodney Eade's successor, Paul Roos, won the 2005 grand final for Sydney by employing similar tactics.
Okay.
Uh,
Now,
the biggest,
quick sidebar here. Paul Roos and I were born on the exact same day.
all right.
Yep, we
Quick
both share.
sidebar here. Paul McCartney and I were born on the same day.
There you go. You don't look to be like you're 82 though.
No, just 19 years apart.
Okay.
Well, 18. Okay. So, but there was an even worse example. Terry Wallace did a super flood in round 21 of 2000. He was playing against Essendon, who were
Hmm.
at that stage in round 21 were undefeated for the whole season and went on to win the 2000 premiership, their last premiership, which your principal at your school might be pleased to know.
Yes,
But
yes, that's and
on this
that's a go ahead.
on this particular week, so Terry Wallace threw a bit of a spanner in that work. He employed a super flood against Essendon in round 21 and employed 14 of the 18 men in the defensive arc for the entire game. And sometimes all 18 men in the defensive arc.
Wow.
And this allowed to beat the previously undefeated Bombers. So as a result of all this, football for a long time started to become very low scoring and kind of
Hmm.
boring. There was a lot of sort of just players just chipping from side to side to side to side and back again, just waiting for an option to open up downfield. And it was turning purists and old fogies like myself off the game. And this is what I wanted to give Damien Hardwick some credit for. I think that in a way he kind of revolutionised the game. Okay, he didn't do it alone. He had a great support staff, many of whom, like McRae and Lepage, have gone to Collingwood.
Right.
Kingsley's gone to GWS.
Yeah.
And then there was Blake.
That's not a name I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not all, credit to him, but basically I think that he brought in this idea of chaos football. So instead of one way to beat the flood is to just chip around and wait for an opening.
Mm-hmm.
I think by playing chaos football, where you just keep it in motion, you don't play perfection, you just keep it going forward and keep the opposition on their toes.
Right.
Or second. And I think that's what worked for us. So
yeah, I mean it's a good tactic if you're keeping the other team unsettled. I think that's a really good thing. Yeah. It allows you to maybe find a gap really quickly and and sneak a goal in that otherwise you may not have been able to get. So you're cautiously optimistic about your club next year. You're looking at it as kind of a glass half full, I think, and filling up, despite all of the the legends having left the club in Cochin and in Rewalt and
I think at heart, every football supporter is like a mug punter or a mug gambler. Do you remember that old Warner Brothers cartoon where there was this cat and he was always gambling and he'd say, "Deal the cards, deal the cards, deal the cards," and then he'd never lose, and then the dog would sort of grab him by the tail and drag him off to some. You don't remember that cartoon?
Was that Sylvester, like from Bugs Bunny?
It was Warner Brothers, but it wasn't one of the established characters.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember that one specifically.
Yeah, so he was just like always back for more. The dog would torture him whenever he lost a bet, like put him through all these incredible torture devices.
And unfortunately, you still see a lot of that in the game today. As you mentioned, you don't do a lot of wagering on your own, but I mean, it still is something that is extraordinarily prevalent in the game because it's
an emotional investment. It's not like a financial investment. Well,
right,
it is,
right.
I suppose.
Yeah.
By your membership. So
yeah, I mean, I've never placed a bet on a game in my life, because it's just not. I don't feel like I know enough, and quite frankly, even knowing enough there's no. I get it's called gambling for a reason because you're not likely to be winning, or more than likely not to be winning, and so I it's just never been my thing. I mean, I've never gone into a casino before. It's just not been been something that's not been something that's interested me. I don't know. I'm not looking to get that dopamine rush from pulling the handle on the slot machine or or whatever, playing cards. I mean, I'm not smart enough to play to play Texas Hold'em and figure out which cards are no longer in the deck, or looking at playing blackjack. And I don't have a clue, and I don't have any interest in doing that sort of thing. So it's not something that I'm really looking at getting into. So so last thing before we close out here, if again, your picks are, and your draft hand in 2024 is significantly better than it is in 2023 because you've picked up an extra second rounder from Fremantle, you've picked up an extra fourth rounder from Port Adelaide, so you have some opportunities to bring in, and even maneuver your way around the draft board a little bit more if you need to with those second round picks. But what are you looking for the club to bring in? What do you think they need to bring in this draft? And as the draft finishes out and we start, getting to the new calendar year and the start of the 2024 season, what is the headline in the paper about Richmond going into 2024? What's the paper going to say about them in terms of their expectations?
I think probably a lot of people are writing us off. I'll guess that.
Okay.
There's that sort of Corns Jenkins mentality. It's probably prevalent. They're saying, okay, the premiership era is definitely over now. They didn't get a great bunch of draft picks this year, but then if they can balance that, I'd like to get under their radar. I'd like to fly under their radar and prove them wrong with maybe they haven't balanced the fact that we did have some really good kids coming through, and we've got still a number of our old grand final players that are still in their prime, and then couple that with just getting some fresh thinking in, because with Uze and Newman and Zeeble, so maybe Damien Hardwick just had run his race.
Okay. Do you think this is Dusty's last year in a Richmond jumper?
I think he's got 2 years left in him.
Okay.
So you don't speculation about him going to another club. Well, it's possible, but
yeah, because I know that he's at 289 games right now, and I know people have been discussing about him getting to that 300th game with the club, which if he stays healthy, that's going to be at about the halfway point of the season this year. So that would be what, March, April, beginning of June, roughly. End of May, beginning of June, that he'd be reaching game 300 in a Richmond jumper. Because I'd heard people talk about the possibility of Sydney, or even the possibility of possibly heading up to the Gold Coast as well. But he's going to be
a mysterious character who doesn't divulge much about himself, about his thoughts or his personal life.
Right.
You can't really second guess, but I just like to think that he would see himself as a one club player.
Okay. And I would love to see that, quite frankly. Okay. I really would love to see him finish out his career on top. I mean, it's going to be strange, for example, to watch Todd Goldstein pulling on an Essendon jumper next year. That's just going to be it's going to be strange. It's going to be hard to wrap my head around seeing that. Now, I think he'll be good for the club, because I think Sam Draper had some major surgery and may not be back for a good chunk of the season. But I just think it's going to be tough to see him playing in a different uniform than what he's played in for his entire career. So, well, hey Peter, I want to thank you for coming on again. I appreciate you and your patience with what turns out to be my total screw ups on my end there. So I am sorry about that. Again, please, convey my apologies to your wife for giving her grief that was not necessary at all. Had I just done a little bit more homework at my end. But I think 2024 is going to be I think it's going to be a very competitive year. I don't think Collingwood is going to run away with things this year. I don't think, Carlton's going to run away with things this year. I think you're going to have a lot of clubs, that you're going to have maybe 14 clubs who probably could play finals this year, maybe even 15 who could play finals, arguably. A couple, I think, are not there yet, but maybe I think that maybe in 2 years we might start talking about North Melbourne maybe getting ready to make that push towards a final spot. But I think everybody else except for maybe them and West Coast and maybe one other club, and I'd have to go back and I'd have to go look at the list of clubs again and figure out who I'm trying to allude to there with that 16th spot on the ladder and maybe the 15th spot. But I think we're going to have a very competitive year where clubs are just beating up on one another, and a team that might win 13 out of the 23 games or 12 out of the 23 games might find themselves playing finals this year. So
yeah,
I think it's gonna be a fun year. I'm looking forward to it. I'm the thing that I like about the footy season for me is because it's something that helps to springboard me into our summertime, because you're going into winter when it's happening, so your weather's getting drearier and that sort of thing. But when footy starts for me here, the weather's starting to change, it's starting to warm up, the sun's coming out more, and we set the clocks back a little bit.
As I told you, I'm a fan of the dreary weather. I don't like summers here.
Yeah,
They torture me.
too hot.
Too hot. Yeah.
So are you
And
somebody
the light
when
is
you
so blindingly bright.
yeah when you now are you're not retired from your job right now, are you?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so I mean, are there thoughts of, I know a lot of people will move north to get away from the winter times, but are you somebody in Australia that they'll head up towards Queensland, they'll head to get to
No,
warmer
I have to
weather?
put up with the humidity.
Yeah, are you somebody who's thinking maybe Tasmania is not such a bad idea?
Tasmania would be nice, actually. It is the coldest state in Australia, and I'd
Yeah.
probably go down to the southernmost tip of Tasmania and get as close to the Antarctic as I can.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I would love to see it, and I hope to get that opportunity next year. I mean, I guess I really need to start actually jotting down what I'm hoping to be some plans on paper, and then figure out how I'm going to make it work. But the fixture has got to come out soon. Okay, they've got to get the fixture done earlier rather than later. So if you're at the AFL house, yeah, if you're at the AFL house and you're listening, you want to just send it to me. You want to send me the fixture. I promise I won't share it with anybody. I'll just do my planning for my trip based upon this. And if I do have to talk to somebody else, I will simply say, "Hey, remember when you said you were going to take me to go watch your club play a game this year? Well, I can tell you about this one game. They're playing this other club on a particular date," without divulging the entire fixture to anybody, because I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to break the trust of the AFL by revealing the entire fixture, since they're going to send it to me early. As if that would happen.
A neutral game when you come over.
What's that?
Can I take you to a neutral game when you
Oh,
come
I would.
over?
Of course, I want to see the Cats play a couple times if I possibly can, but I want to go see as many games as I can, and I want to go visit local footy clubs as well, because I've talked to so many of them. I want to go see what I have learned about those clubs, that they are the hub around which the wheel of that community rotates. Yeah, especially when you're talking like country footy, that it's you have that small town, that thing is the focal point in many instances of that town, and I just want to see how that works. And one of the things that I've decided that I is that I want to try to also get as many like polo shirts for as many different local footy clubs as I possibly can. I have a couple of them now, and I have one that is supposedly going to be en route soon. So I have two from the Northern Territories and one coming from South Australia. But I love being able to wear those, because they are conversation pieces here, because people are wondering what the heck is it that you're wearing, because it has all of the local advertising in this club that the Tracy Village Razorbacks. Who the hell are the Tracy Village Razorbacks? And I have to explain to them that it's this Australian rules football club in Darwin in the Northern Territories, and it's it leads to a whole conversation, and it's been a lot of fun telling people about the game from that vantage point, and it's so that's one of the things I want to do as well. And like I said, there's part of me, like I said, wants to make that trip towards Adelaide, because I want to go visit. There's a club in Nangwari in South Australia that I would love to go visit, and just to meet those people face to face, because I had them on, and this was a club that that they had lost over 100 games in a row before they won their next game. So they went like 6 or 7 years without having won a game, and they kept battling. And somebody had actually burned down their clubhouse. I mean, it was an arson fire that somebody had destroyed the property and that sort of thing. And just how this group persevered. And I would love to go, meet those people and shake their hand and that sort of thing. And I just, because we don't have anything like that here. We have high school sports, which are really, really a big deal. We have college sports, which are a big deal, but we don't have like the community. The high schools are kind of like that, but it's for people who are up through like year 12 of high school. There's nothing for those people who are 22, 25, 30, 35 years old that are playing in the Masters division or whatever of footy. There's nothing like that brings an entire community together like a football, netball, cricket organization within a community, which I think are just, we could certainly learn an awful lot about bringing communities together by having something like that here. I think we could learn a lot about that sort of thing by having something similar to that. So, yep.
We don't have the football scholarships here like you have.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And it's we have something right now that's changed, because student athletes used to be student athletes, but now there are a lot of college athletes, especially basketball and football players, gridiron football players, who are the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, who is kind of like the AFL to the league, if you will. The NCAA oversees college sports. Well, they've allowed for what they call NIL licensing, which is like name, image, and likeness, which means now that these college athletes, these students, are able to actually get endorsement money. So if you like, when you see athletes doing commercials on television, these young athletes are able to get endorsement money from different companies and that sort of thing. And you have college athletes here in the United States who are getting paid significantly more than the highest paid players in the AFL. And these are not professional athletes at this point. They're college athletes, and they're getting paid significantly more than AFL players at the top of their game. And I think that the college athletes should have been able to, have a little bit more spending money in their pocket. But I think that we've swung the pendulum way too far in the other direction, because there's a quarterback from the University of Southern California who is eligible to go to become a professional player next year, or to stay in college for another year. But he said that if he goes professional next year, that he wants to get a small chunk of owning the team that he plays for, which I've never heard that happen from an athlete who's playing the game at the present time. He said he wants to be like a small minority owner of the team that he goes to play for. And as he said, I can always go back to college and play one more year of college football, because I'm earning like $5 million US playing college football. $5 million US playing college football. It's ridiculous. It's making college football, which was in many ways like the purest form of the game here in the US, almost unbearable as well. I think it's made it really, really frustrating in that respect. So I don't know. But hey, I have rambled on enough, sir. I'm really looking forward to the draft. I know it's coming up here at the end of November, and I probably will actually get up to watch it on television live, because I really want to see what happens with the first pick. Do the Eagles hang on to it? Do they work out a deal with the Roos or with anybody else? I mean, the Roos have they've got, if the Roos really want that pick, they can go get that pick. It's just how much do they want to spend to get it? Because if I'm not mistaken, they have like 5 first-round picks this year. which, I'm still trying to figure out how they, getting, pick 3 for Mackay is still just, blows my mind that they were able to get that pick for him. Just an awesome amount of compensation. I think it might be, maybe more than they should have gotten for him, but that's a whole nother story right there. But Peter, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for your patience with me while as I was figuring out why this was not working, and I'm glad we got it working. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought it was this end, actually.
Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't. I'm glad it wasn't. I'm glad I got it fixed here, because I would have been using this again tomorrow when I sit down with Dr. Outhred, who's going to be talking about the Bulldogs, and he would have had the same problem that you had, which you didn't have. So I'm glad I figured it out tonight. So, cheers. Have a fantastic rest of the week, and all the best to your family, sir.
And you. And we'll see you next year sometime.
Absolutely. I look forward to meeting you in person. I want to meet as many of the people that I've spoken with on the podcast, and as many listeners. I'm hoping I can have, set something up where I, can have a, I don't know. I'm not going to go rent a park and say, "Hey, look, I'm here, come see me." But I'm hoping that if I'm somewhere, that I can at least reach out to folks and say, "Hey, I will be, at this location if you want to stop by," and I'll, I'm not a celebrity. That's not what I'm trying to say. That I'm not trying to say it and sound that way, but I mean, I want to hopefully actually encounter people in person that I've been speaking to for many years online, is what I'm hoping to do. Yeah.
I could show you around the inner city and show you some of the old clubs and the old grounds.
Absolutely. I would absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. And I have, and I do, before I wrap up this episode, I want to send my absolute best thoughts to my mate Orville Gibson, who lives up in Tara, Queensland. I was actually trading messages with him on Messenger while you and I were chatting. There are some extraordinarily serious forest fires and brush fires that are going on near where he lives, and he said that the closest one is about 1 kilometer from his house right now. So yeah, his car is packed. They cut down all of the straw or the silage that was growing in the farmers' fields around the community. So that's all been cut down, hoping to, if the fire jumps across the road and gets there, that it will burn that up and not travel any further and go into the community. But he's packed up and ready to get the heck out of town if he has to do so, and he's not looking forward to that, because he just moved there a couple of years ago from Russell Island, which is right off the coast of Brisbane. And I talked to Orville quite a bit, and Orville, I am thinking about you, man. I'm praying for you that everything works out okay, and that the the firefighters that are there, are able to get this thing to turn back around on itself and burn itself out, hopefully. So really pulling for you, man, and pulling for your community. So but Peter, sorry to end that on such a downer there, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before we wrapped up here. So
Sure.
Yeah, have a fantastic Tuesday and enjoy the rest of the week. And are you going to be watching? Are you watching the World Championships, the cricket? Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
when we play next, but
yeah, I've not been able to watch any of that, because that tournament is not available on Willow TV here. So I've started watching some of the opening contest from the women's Big Bash League. So I started watching that a little bit, because my
favorite player is Glenn Maxwell, so I'm hoping whenever he plays next, he has a big day with the bat.
I hope so too. And it sounded like there was a heck of a contest today between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and I did not see who won, but it sounded like that Afghanistan was primed for an upset. But I don't know who won it, but I'll look that up on Code Sports here before I head to bed while this is downloading. But hey, man, I'm going to let you go so I can get this downloaded and I can get myself downloaded because I need to get up for work in about 5.5 hours.
We're gonna have some lunch.
All righty. Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Peter. All right, Peter. Hey, thanks so much, man, for sitting down to chat this morning. It's a lot of fun. I think Richmond's going to be a rather interesting club to follow this year. A lot of changes. I think we can safely say they might be a year ahead on the change cycle from where the Cats are right now. And well, we may be emulating what Richmond's doing here in about 12 months' time. So it's going to be a rather tumultuous time for Victorian football coming up over the next year or so. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But ladies and gentlemen, look out for one another. Check up with your friends and family. Reach out to them. Give them a call. If you need to talk to somebody, please check my show notes. I always put those numbers for Australia and the United States. If you need to get in touch with somebody, please reach out and talk to somebody. Go out and have that coffee with your friends. Go out and get that beer, whatever it is you want to do. Head to Bunnings, get a snag. Yeah, looking forward to doing that hopefully next year. But folks, remember, you can find everything related to my podcast over at my website, ayankonthefooty.com. You can leave a review, as I mentioned, if you want to get one of those stickers. You can get on the mailing list. So when new episodes come out, you can also get that in your inbox within a few minutes of when it's released. If you want to help out the podcast, and again, I am planning on making the trip to Australia next footy season. Just cannot wait for the fixture to come out so I can start looking at that with Ernest and figuring out how I can get the most done in the time that I'm going to be there. And again, I'm hoping to spend about 3.5, maybe 4 weeks there. I know a lot of people have said, hey, when you come, I want to take you to a game. I'm probably going to take you up on it. And just trying to see what's going to be the best thing for me to do. Because again, I want to see games at Cardinia Park, of course, hopefully a couple if I can. I want to see a game at the MCG, if not more. I want to get to Marvel. Still debating on the whole idea of making the drive to Adelaide or taking the ferry boat down to Tasmania and possibly catching a North Melbourne or a Hawthorn game in Tasmania. I just think visiting the island would be very unique. Now, granted, I know it's going to be in the winter time, so the climate there will be rather chilly, but hey, I'm used to winter. We're getting into that right now. We were down to about 7 degrees this morning when I went to work, but in about 8 weeks, we'll be down to about -7. So looking forward to that. So again, folks, if you want to help out the podcast, you can click on that Buy Me a Coffee button. Anything that comes into that helps to keep the podcast up and running. And quite frankly, if you want to help with the trip, I wouldn't say no to that. Okay. That would be absolutely awesome if you'd like to do that, but you certainly don't have to. And I will give you definitely multiple shout outs for that sort of thing. I'm thinking about maybe putting some episodes maybe behind like Patreon or something of that nature, but I like having everything available to those of you who are checking it out, because I want to have it all be accessed by whomever wants to check it out. So as much as I say that I'm going to do that, I probably won't. But you can find me on Twitter at Yank_on, Yank on the Footy podcast on Facebook, a Yank on the Footy on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn as well. I do appreciate the kind words that so many of you have had. Again, this is an absolute labor of love on my part. I love sharing your game. I'm a little frustrated again that I'm not able to watch the World Championships of Cricket because of the inability to access that through Willow. I did watch, at least I started watching the first WBBL match between the Sixers and the Stars. I'm not quite done watching the I believe the Sixers were batting first, if I'm not mistaken. I think the Stars won, and they decided they were going to bowl first. So I'm going to be going back to watch that here, hopefully in the next little while. But again, I appreciate all the kind words. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. And this has been episode 296 of A Yank on the Footy. Thanks for checking it out. Please share it with your friends and family. Subscribe to the podcast over on my website. Subscribe on YouTube. Give it a share with your friends. Okay. And until next time, everyone, goodbye.